All right, welcome in. We're the Real Selection Committee. I'm Mike. This is Greg. Our panel's a little smaller this week. The other two guys are off this week, but we're going to dive into talking more about these bubble teams. We picked a couple teams here to talk about, but right now we're at the end of March. We're in this March Madness right here, this craziness. College basketball tournament going on. I think everybody's bracket's pretty much just kaput with all the upsets, and that's what's fun about these tournaments. I love the college basketball format, and that's kind of what was the big push, I think, for the college football to join into this, because everybody loves tournaments. It gives you the real proven national champion. It's the only way I think that they can do it to get to the real champion.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why playoffs were formed. Because way back in the old days, they would just take the two best teams and play. We've seen things come along. So, and the college basketball tournament, to your point, always fun. Even people who aren't basketball fans watch it. Mm-hmm. And you know what? No one cries about who gets in that tournament like we were discussing upstairs.
Yeah.
But for some reason, you people want to cry about the college football playoffs. So let's get into what we were going to do, and we'll talk a little bit more about all that as we go.
Right. So, there's 68 teams now that make it into college basketball, and, 31 of them are from all the conferences. That builds half of that tournament. So my question was, the whole college football thing was everybody's crying and they want to change this format. Some of the things out there floating, another expansion when we had 12 teams last year. Yeah. And I thought it worked out great, So now, the rumor is, or people talking, they want to do a 4-4, 2-2-1-1, which would be a 14-team tournament with, 4 Big Ten and 4 SEC, 2 ACC, 2 Big 12, 1 Group of 5, and kind of 1 in that large would be the buildup. But, really, there's always going to be someone that's left out no matter how you work it, because even in the basketball, you had a powerhouse team like Indiana didn't make it in, Ohio State and stuff like that. I mean, it's so hard to get this tournament right. Let's just enjoy it for what it is and why these teams make it in. I think they did an awesome job.
I think the tournament was done excellently. There's no other way they could do it. Mm-hmm. And to me, we kind of figured last year when we started it would be a 3-3, 2-2, 1-1.
Yeah.
Big Ten and SEC would each get 3 invites and so forth. Well, it turned out that the Big Ten got 4, SEC got their 3, the ACC lucked in the 2. Mm-hmm. Clemson winning the conference really knocked probably Alabama out. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then I like Boise in, and I like Notre Dame proved they deserved to be in. A lot of people were complaining about them, and all they did was go all the way and beat Georgia. Mm-hmm. Big, rough, tough SEC team.
Right.
So I hate when people say we should put 4 of anything in. Mm-hmm. You put 14, 16, 12, 24 teams in and take the teams that earn it. Mm-hmm. Champions.
Right.
I'm sorry, I hate when people say championships don't matter. Then why play? Mm-hmm. What's the tournament to decide?
Right.
Champion.
Right.
So league championships should matter. Mm-hmm. College basketball, as you just said, there's 31 conferences that send teams in.
Yeah.
And that is outstanding because you still get another 30 teams on top of that in.
Right.
In college football, I think the right teams made it in last year. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of teams that cut their own throat at the end of the year, as we talked about.
Right.
So there's my thoughts there.
Yeah, so I mean, like you said, let's just say that 4th seeded team from the, let's go with the SEC, say they played an ACC school, like the team left out, let's just, for example, say Miami would beat one of those 4 teams. You just automatically put 4 of those in. They have a legitimate gripe as Miami being in. Yeah. So, let's move on a little bit further. We picked 3 bubble teams, and these teams had opportunities galore to make it into the playoffs, but they kind of hurt themselves.
Yeah, these 3 teams were 3 of the best teams in college football last year. But unexpected losses hurt these teams.
Yeah.
South Carolina, I can't say they lost anybody they shouldn't have because they lost to 3 good football teams and got hot down the end of the year and was probably the hottest team at the end of last year. Ole Miss got beat by 4-8 Kentucky. That pretty much sealed their fate. And then Miami loses to Syracuse at the end of the year after being up 21 points or something. I can't remember exactly, but they ended up losing the game to Syracuse, and that sealed their fate.
Yeah.
So all 3 of these teams were quality football teams last year. They got left out.
Yeah.
But understand they got left out because of what they did. Now, not because people voted them out. They ended up goofing themselves.
Right. Yep. So the 3 teams we're going to talk about, we got Ole Miss, which was a team that had a great schedule. They finished 10-3 on the year, 5-3 in a conference. They were a good team. They were a team that a lot of people thought, with schedule-wise, they should have been in. The other team we're going to talk about, South Carolina, they were another team that was really hot towards the end of the year, 9-3. A lot of people thought this team was going to make it in there. And then Miami. Miami started out the year in the top 10 pretty much all year. They fumbled against Syracuse. That hurt them, knocked them out of the ACC championship game here. And so these 3 teams we thought are teams that we want to talk about. So I want to dive in and we're going to talk about Ole Miss first. We'll start with Ole Miss. Yeah. Like I said, they finished the year 10-3, 5-3, had a good schedule. Their biggest question, Lane Kiffin's the coach here. Now they lost their best quarterback. Jackson Dart is gone. Who the biggest question there is who they're going to get to fill in for him. They got 2 guys there, Walker Howard and Austin Simmons. They're both talented guys. So we'll see how that plays out for their starting role. Let's dive in a little bit to their schedule. Let's see here. They got a few teams in there. This year they got Arkansas's in there. They got Georgia. Oklahoma's going to be much improved. South Carolina. And so their schedule's kind of soft. Projection-wise, they have them winning 9.5 games. So that's close to being making the playoffs.
Well, okay. They won 10 last year because they won a bowl game.
Yes.
They were 9-3 last year.
Yes.
And they had an outstanding quarterback. This year, they've got an unproven guy. Okay, so, and their running back class, they had a guy that started half the games last year for them. So he has some experience, but relatively unproven.
Yes.
The wide receiving core looks pretty good. They got 1 starter back from last year and 2 transfers in that were starters for their old team. And they also have 2 other transfers coming in that started for their old team, which adds a lot of depth. So their wide receiving core is pretty strong. Tight end is a returning starter, so you like that. The offensive line has 1 returning starter on it. The other guys I can find really no information on, or they were transfers that where I was looking didn't offer a lot of information. So at the very best, let's say those guys are starters, there's no cohesiveness. So that's going to have to be worked on throughout the year. I think with that alone, it would be hard for them to win 9 games. Yeah. They're going to have to come along. I put them, obviously Ole Miss has been a team that has dealt with this for their entire existence. Now their defense. The defensive line has 1 returning starter on it. He's an all-SEC performer. The other 3 are unproven guys. Your linebacker core, there is a lot of experience there. 1 guy back from the team, 1 guy transferred in. And then you got your defensive backs, all unproven players. What about that? Now here again, what we see as experience doesn't always equate to how good the player is.
Right.
So I'll say that. I'm not trying to belittle any of these players by any stretch. But that doesn't tell me that this team is going to be in the SEC and go better than 9-3 when you got all kinds of unprovenness. So good luck to them. I mean, the wide receiving core is a strength.
Yes.
So, and the offensive line is going to have to come together. I think they're going to struggle.
Yeah. Yeah, like you said, that was one of the biggest questions, the offensive line, how they're going to hold up for a new quarterback back there. Like you said, they're going to have a lot of new faces in that offensive line with a new quarterback. That's going to be their hardest hit area. I agree with you there. The incoming transfers, I mean, they got that Harrison Wallace wide receiver. He's transferred from Penn State. He's a 4-star athlete.
Yeah.
He looks like one of their better guys coming in. You know, they have 22 incoming transfers coming in. As far as their rankings, they were ranked number 2 as far as transfer rankings. So they got a lot of depth coming in. They got a lot of offensive line coming in, guys coming in. So the question here is, Ole Miss with that SEC schedule, do you feel that this team is going to contend and have a shot of making it into the playoffs? Where do you, that 9.5 points or spread or wins on the season, do you think that's going to be enough to make it into the playoffs?
No, and I would question them getting to 9 wins. And like you say, they've got a lot of transfer help coming in, and that's fine, and that may pay dividends later in the year. I think it's going to be tough for Ole Miss, not impossible, because Ole Miss is a team that for years has been on the cusp, even without great players, and they somehow, some way managed to be a thorn. I put them at a 7 to 8 win team. I put them not in the playoffs, but we'll see.
I'm going to have to agree with you there. There's so many unknowns.
Yeah.
The hardest position's the quarterback, and when
Yeah.
you got a weak offensive line, that ain't helping your quarterback out any. You know, it is the SEC schedule. Now, they don't have Alabama or some of the big ones on there, but they still have LSU. They still got Georgia. They still got South Carolina. These are all teams that are, you know, very good coming into the year. And I'm thinking I'm with you with that 7 wins. So I'm struggling with thinking this team's going to make it in.
The recruiting class was a top 16 recruiting class, so we'll see. I mean, a lot can go on between now and then. But, yeah, I see them being 7 or 8 wins.
Our next team on this here is South Carolina. Here's a team that we talked about. We thought that this team was probably one of the hottest teams in the league, you know, in college football at the end of the season, the way they finished their brutal schedule. Yeah. Now, let's talk about that. You know, I looked up. They're only projected to win 5.5 games. I mean, they have a crazy tough schedule. Now, let's look at, I'm going to talk about that schedule right now. We got Missouri, you got Alabama, you got Ole Miss, you got Texas A&M, and at the end of the season, you're going to end up with Clemson, which I think they're going to be much improved.
Oh, yeah.
So that's another game that they're going to struggle with. So that 5 wins, wow. Let's, you know, how do you feel that South Carolina is going to play in this equation?
Well, you know, they got a tougher schedule, but South Carolina on paper is a much better team than Ole Miss. Why, you might ask?
Yes.
Well,
yeah.
They have an 18th ranked recruiting class coming in with a bunch of 4-star athletes that are all over the field. So that's good for them, right? Then you look and you go quarterback. Oh, we got Lenore Sellers there. Wasn't he All-American last year, 3rd team or honorable mention? He was all first team SEC. That's the one position you kind of want back, right? And Ole Miss, as we just discussed, we don't know what's going on there.
Right, right.
Their running back's a transfer from Utah State that was 2nd team All Mountain West. Put up really good numbers. So that's a pretty good thing for them.
Yeah.
Wide receiving core is a mixed bag. So, you know, maybe a little bit down on the wide receiving core. Offensive line is full of starting experience. Only one of them played for South Carolina last year. But they have 4 transfers coming in that were all starters for the team they're leaving. Don't know how to grade that per se, but I would say that's a good way to have it if you're not going to be all starters from your own team. Tight end played half the games last year, so the offense looks like could be okay. Mm-hmm. You got a top quarterback, that's what you want. Defensive line, a little bit weak. Linebackers, be first-time starters in the linebacker. The defensive backs have a 3-year starter coming back. 2nd team All SEC. All their defensive backs have experience, so that is a huge plus for them. And like I say, top 20 ranked recruiting class coming in will help. 4 players were all league selections that are coming back. I think South Carolina grades stronger than Ole Miss, if for no other reason. The quarterback and the running back are really strong. Wide receivers can get better the better the quarterback play is. So I think South Carolina is going to be above that 5 wins, but I will put South Carolina in the same 7 to 8 win category as I do Ole Miss.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you, except for their schedule they got a rough schedule there.
Sure.
They're facing. As far as their recruiting and their transfer portal, they're number 14 on that. They got a couple key pickups like Aaron Nolan from Ohio State was a 4-star quarterback. He transfers down there. I know he ain't gonna probably get much starting time down there with Sellers in there,
No.
but depth at the QB position is always a plus and a bonus there.
Oh, absolutely.
Plus this Justin Okawangwo. He's transferring from Alabama. He's a linebacker. He's going to jump right in the mix. And so they got depth at all their key positions. And starting quarterback is great. So I agree with you as far as South Carolina on paper looks better. But that brutal schedule in the SEC, it's going to be tough. I think they're a bubble team. I think they're going to struggle to make it into the playoffs just with that rigorous SEC schedule.
Yeah, absolutely. But here again, no one picked them to do anything last year. And of course, they didn't make the playoffs, so it's dumb to say, but they were 9-3.
Yeah.
And they were a breath away from making the playoffs. So, I mean, this team here, they have a tendency of being that thorn in everybody's side. I still see them being, 7-8 win team. But we'll see. I mean, they could get a couple games go their way. They could get a couple go the other way, too. I think, like you said, they are going to be hard-pressed to see the playoffs.
Yeah, they're definitely.
But that quarterback helps out a bunch.
Let's go talk about our last team we wanted to talk about. To me, this was a team that I thought was going to do some things this last year, and then they had a couple key losses that prevented them from making it into the playoffs. Biggest question is now they lost their quarterback, their starting quarterback, Cam Ward, who was an amazing player. Did he will them to a lot of wins? Because they had to come from behind with that defense. How do you see? What's your outlook on Miami Hurricanes here?
I don't think it's going to be bad. I think that being in the ACC helps. Although, being that I'm kind of working on the ACC squads right now, I see Clemson's going to be really strong. But dealing with Miami, you lose Cam Ward, all they did was go out and get Carson Beck from Georgia, 2-year starter for Georgia. Put up decent numbers. So, that's not bad. Limited experience at the running back. But, running backs are what they are. Wide receiving core is young with 1 returning starter, so 4-star recruits is depth, so maybe not as bad as that looks. Offensive line has 3 returning starters, plus a transfer that was a bit honorable mention Big 12 member. So the offensive line is looking really good for Miami. So Carson Beck, who is more of a stand in the backfield quarterback, is going to be protected the way it looks. Tight end is going to be a position battle between a first-year starter at Miami and a transfer from Tulane that had 8 or 9 starts over his tenure there. The defense, returning starters at 3 or 4 defensive line positions. That should make them a lot better because the defensive line, to me, is the big part of their defense. Weak side linebacker, middle linebacker are both returning starters. Look at that. Front 7 looks loaded. Now we get into the defensive backfield. Only 1 returner, and the 3 other guys are transfers that were starters elsewhere. So the defense looks like it should be much stronger. So we'll see. If the defense plays the way it looks on paper, Miami should win the ACC, but I'll tell you Clemson's going to be right there, and I haven't gotten through all the ACC yet, but I see Miami winning 9-10 games. I see them as a pretty good chance of making the playoffs. 7 players coming back that were all league, honorable mention or better.
Yeah.
Pretty strong.
I think is probably set up for the best run out of these 2 squads because, like you mentioned, they're in the ACC schedule.
Yeah.
They make a few plays here and there. They're in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Their schedule, they start out the year playing Notre Dame. You know, they got Florida on the schedule. Florida State's going to be a little more improved. SMU's still in there. They're a decent team. Pitt's still in there. They were 10-3. They lost 2 games in the conference. And like you said, you got into the incoming transfers. Their big fish that they landed was Carson Beck.
Yep.
They needed this guy to help replace Cam Ward from leaving. And like I said, their transfer portal ranking was number 5. So they're filling a lot of holes with talent coming in. You know, Carson Beck's going to definitely help out. They got some defensive back helps. They got Xavier Lucas, who's transferring from Wisconsin. Charles Brantley, he's coming from Michigan State. So they robbed some of the Big Ten schools to get some defensive backs coming in. So they got some good players coming in.
Plus, they got 3 4-star recruits coming in at cornerback. So and safety. They got a guy from safety. So they got 4 4-star recruits coming into that defensive backfield. They've got 2. They got a 5-star edge rusher and a 4-star edge rusher coming in. So they put some time into their defense on the offseason. 13th ranked class recruiting wise. And like I say, it's littered with 4 stars. They got 1 5-star, littered with 4 stars the rest of the way. Miami looks like they should be a real force. Yeah, I think they have a really good shot at making the playoffs.
This was the team that they needed to improve on their defense. They filled in the quarterback position where I think they're going to be a lot better off as far as one of these 3 bubble teams.
Yeah.
I think that this team has a real good possibility of making it into the playoffs. This is one of the 3 that I'm going to say I think Miami has the best chance of making it in.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, I put them at 9 or 10, closer to 10 wins.
Yeah.
Just because they look that strong. Clemson does too. And like I said, I haven't got to the other ACC big boys. Well, I haven't been started Louisville. Louisville looks pretty good on offense. But at any rate.
Yeah, the sportsbook has them winning 9.5 games. That's where they're coming in. I think they're able to do that. And if they win one of those games, I think they're in the playoffs. So they're really on right there as far as making it in.
Yeah. And like I say, the thing for South Carolina and Ole Miss, they play in the SEC. And as much as we have dogged on that conference, we still know it's top to bottom the strongest conference.
Right.
And it's hard to win in that conference. And the ACC, not saying it's weak, but it's not the SEC. And Miami grades better than South Carolina and Ole Miss, and they're in a weaker conference. They definitely, of those 3, have the best shot at breaking through the bubble this year.
Yeah, and that was fun. And we're going to continue on diving into all these teams and try to come up with who's making it in, who's making it out. We got a lot to review and talk about and discuss with you. Hopefully we hear from any of you guys who you think or these 3 teams, if they make it into the playoffs or not, or who you have. You know, we'd love to hear from you. It's real easy, you know, just to put a comment down, like and subscribe. You know, we definitely need that. We want you guys to help us out. We really enjoy this. We love studying and watching college football. I'm sure you do.
Right.
That's why you're coming across this channel and finding it. But, yeah, that's going to do it for this week. I had fun.
Oh, it was great.
Yeah.
And like he said, those of you who are fans of these 3 teams, drop lines in because you're probably going to study your team better than anybody else. We're doing it in a brief, vague way. I mean, and... you know, let us know what you know. Obviously, we know a little bit about their starters or projected starters. You might know a little bit more about their recruits because a lot of their recruits are from the states you people may live in.
Yeah.
Give us your thoughts.
Yep. Well, that's going to wrap us up right here. Thanks for watching. Catch you next week.
Peace.